Welcome back to the 2024 APAICS Energy and Sustainability Summit. I'm Madeline Milka, President and CEO of APAICS. Our next panel is Energy Diversification in Transportation. The transition to electric vehicles and other forms of sustainable transportation is a significant topic in energy and sustainability. As we drive toward a carbon-free future, there is a pressing need to coordinate transportation planning and development in a way that supports companies and consumers to make the transition to cleaner sources of energy. This panel will explore how coordinated planning and investment can support innovation, maximize project budgets, yield grid solutions that build value beyond just transportation, and improve our communities. Our first speaker for this panel is Senator Brian Schatz, who proudly serves as Hawaii's senior United States Senator. He chairs the Indian Affairs Committee and serves on the Appropriations Committee, the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, the Foreign Relations Committee, and the Select Committee on Ethics. Senator Schatz has worked to increase climate resiliency in Hawaii, advocating for accessible solar power, EV charging stations, and the protection of natural resources for his constituents. As chair of the Senate Democrats' Special Committee on the Climate Crisis, Senator Schatz is leading efforts to build a clean energy future while ensuring that every community can benefit from the energy transition. Let's give a warm welcome to Senator Schatz.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to join you at the APAICS Energy and Sustainability Summit. 2 years ago, Democrats took the biggest climate action in history with the Inflation Reduction Act, and it's working better and faster than expected. We're seeing record levels of investment in clean technologies, and hundreds of thousands of good-paying union jobs are being created all over the country. And more people are swapping gas cars for EVs and furnaces for heat pumps. The economy is growing and emissions are falling. But we can't solve the climate crisis without addressing the single biggest source of pollution in America, which is transportation. A lot of work to make transportation cleaner and more efficient is already underway because of the two bills that we passed, the IRA and the infrastructure law. People are saving thousands of dollars on EVs through tax credits, and we're also helping states and localities to adopt electric school buses, modernize transit, and shore up highways and bridges against extreme weather. There's still more work to do, but we have to recognize that we can't drive our way out of this crisis. Instead, we need to be more thoughtful about how we're structuring our communities. One of the ways that we can do that is building more homes near transit, which would both reduce the number of cars on the road and cut people's commute times. That's just one example, but this much is clear. Coordination and planning are essential to decarbonizing transportation. No one has a monopoly on good ideas, and it's going to take everyone's energy and involvement to get us over the line. So I hope you have a good discussion, and please keep up the fight. Thank you, and aloha.
Our next speaker is Representative Debbie Dingell. Congresswoman Dingell also represents Michigan's 6th Congressional District. She currently serves on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, the House Committee on Natural Resources, and the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic. Having worked in the auto industry for over 3 decades as president of the General Motors Foundation, Congresswoman Dingell has played an instrumental role in incorporating policies that speed our transition to electric vehicles. Whether it be introducing the 100% Clean Economy Act or the USA Electrify Forward Act, Representative Dingell commits her work in Congress to protecting the environment for generations to come. Please join me in welcoming Congresswoman Debbie Dingell.
Hi, everyone. It's Congresswoman Debbie Dingell from Michigan's 6th District. And I'm honored to join the Asia Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies for this Energy and Sustainability Summit. These conversations are important and they matter. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a lifelong car girl. My home state of Michigan put the world on wheels, and now we are committed to driving the future of mobility. The auto industry is working hard to stay at the forefront of innovation and technology globally. And the work that we do here in Michigan and in this country strengthens domestic manufacturing, it advances research, and most importantly, it creates jobs across our country. The transition from internal combustion engine vehicles to EVs is hard, and we're working hard to do that. You're also seeing many other advances in the industry, more safety features, an internet of features on automobiles for consumers to choose. We're looking at other alternative technology like hydrogen-driven cars. We're looking at autonomous vehicles, connectivity, sustainability, mobility solutions, manufacturing advancements, labor availability. How do you train people for the jobs of the future? And distribution models. All of these offer an exciting potential future for the industry. But for that to be the case, there are real issues connected to them. We have to be talking about them, addressing them, and solving them. The truth is, all of the factors facing the auto industry are real and they're challenging. There is global competition for automotive investment and supply chains. The countries and regions that control them will set the new industry requirements and control global markets. And by the way, we're not competing on level playing fields. And we have to work hard to make sure we're competing in a global marketplace with a level playing field, where there aren't countries that are subsidizing the businesses and where workers are paid a decent wage and have safety and health requirements, environmental standards, labor standards. Let me start by talking about electric vehicles. We need to bring our supply chains home. We need to be manufacturing EVs, their batteries, and their components, and minerals here in America. We've already taken a critical step forward by setting new standards that will help ensure our national EV charging network is user-friendly, reliable, and accessible to all Americans. The bipartisan infrastructure law included historic investments of $7.5 billion for EV charging infrastructure across the country, and more than $7 billion for the critical mineral supply chains necessary for batteries, components, materials, and recycling. And by the way, we need to be spending money on that R&D, so we're not dependent on China for the minerals in those batteries. There is new and exciting technology out there that is going to make those batteries successful. We also need to bring down the cost of EVs to make sure that this just isn't a vehicle for the few who can afford it, for just the wealthy, but for everyone. And that's why we included a series of consumer tax credits in the Inflation Reduction Act. I am excited about our opportunity to herald a new era of mobility and sustain our role as a global leader in auto innovation and manufacturing. Let me tell you some of the other things that have been happening. NHTSA recently issued its final CAFE standards for passenger vehicles. I've long said that we need one national program that simultaneously gives the industry certainty while reducing emissions and making fuel economy more efficient. I'm optimistic that these final standards, which appear to align with EPA regulations, will save consumers money at the pump, which is something we need to do, and promote fuel conservation, American energy independence, and domestic automotive manufacturing. Importantly, they also preserve vehicle choice, enabling manufacturers to use all available technologies, including advanced internal combustion engines, hybrid technology, and electric vehicles for compliance. People work together because, unfortunately, there are three agencies that are working in this arena: EPA, also the DOE, Department of Energy, had a petroleum equivalency rulemaking, and then DOT, which is doing the fuel economy standards for internal combustion engines. They have to work together because it is critical we continue to work to keep the American auto industry a global leader. And at the same time, cutting costs for families, allowing them to go further on a tank of gas, but still having the vehicle performance they want and need, and a vehicle they can get their families in. We've also been talking a lot lately in Washington about the importance of supply chain security and resilience to our economic security, our national security, and our global security. We recognize the importance of acting now to prevent the debilitating shortages that people really didn't understand had happened with outsourcing until we witnessed across the world during the COVID-19 pandemic what happened, and that we didn't have the capacity to produce masks, gloves, and gowns. And we want to avoid the need for significant government intervention to rebuild our supply chain. Perhaps the biggest area we have needed to work on is the semiconductor industry. The long-term shortage in semiconductor chips forced manufacturers to temporarily halt production of assembly lines. In my state, parking lots were full of vehicles that didn't have those chips, negatively impacting suppliers and American workers across the country. When I'm not old, I'm seasoned. When I started in the auto industry, which I worked in for more than 30 years, the United States used to produce nearly 40% of the world's chip supply. Now it's down to 12%. And that is why nearly 2 years ago, we passed the $54.2 billion CHIPS and Science Act, which included $2 billion for what we call legacy chips, mature technology nodes, which are used in auto manufacturing. And they're needed, they're a priority for critical manufacturing industry, such as the auto industry that I'm talking about. It's pure and simple. We can't make cars or any other electronics without chips. We can't boost our economy or support consumers without chips. And we can't support our workforce or offer manufacturing apprenticeships without chips. So we have to address this issue. We can't be worried that a war in Taiwan would virtually shut down our economy. We have to. Yes, it's an economic issue. It's a job issue. It's a national security issue. Now that our economy is recovering, it's critical we learn lessons from that crisis and take the meaningful steps we must to prevent that same thing from happening in the future. And we've made progress. The CHIPS and Science Act and the Inflation Reduction Act were important steps, but we can and we have to do more to address supply chain weaknesses and increase domestic manufacturing capabilities. Because here's the reality. We know we're going to face crises in the future, and we've got to be better prepared. And we need to be taking those steps now. We have to keep working together to address these issues. Having important conversations like these that we're having during the summit, they're critical to moving forward with the change that we need to bring about. Thank you all again for asking me to join you today for a few thoughts. And I look forward to our continued work ahead. We need to roll up our sleeves and make sure we're doing what we need to do to protect the United States, keep us at the forefront of innovation and technology. As I've said before, it's an economic security issue, a jobs issue, and a national security issue.
Our moderator for this panel is Dr. Jenny Liu. Dr. Liu received her PhD in agriculture and resource economics at the University of California, Berkeley, and is now an associate professor in urban studies and planning at Portland State University. She is an environmental and transportation economist with a focus on public policy, urban issues, and social equity. Dr. Liu has conducted research on an Oregon state-level carbon tax, the Oregon electric vehicle industry, household residential location decisions, and its effects on travel behavior and economic development impacts of transit-oriented developments across the country. Please give Dr. Liu and our next group of panelists a warm welcome.
Okay, thanks for that introduction. Welcome everyone to our panel on sustainable transportation at the APAICS Energy and Sustainability Summit. I'm Dr. Jenny Liu. I will be your moderator for this particular session. And today we're really fortunate to have 4 distinguished experts who are going to share their insights on a transition towards cleaner energy and transportation and policy. And so first, our panelists, we have Sarah Chou, who is the Senior Sustainability Consultant at Southwest Airlines. Next, we have Prateek Joshi, Researcher and Project Manager in Energy Systems Integration at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. We are also joined by Jumana Master, Program Manager for Sustainable Travel Experience at Delta Airlines. And finally, we're also honored to have Representative Trish Chica from the Hawaii House of Representatives. Thank you all for being here. Let's begin with some brief introductions. Could each of you please kind of introduce yourselves, your organization, and briefly kind of describe your work in sustainable transportation? So let's kick this off with Sarah and kind of move down the line for your introductions. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks, Jenny. Good afternoon. I'm excited to be here today. I'm Sarah. I'm on the environmental sustainability team at Southwest Airlines, and my role is focused on all of our commercial programs. So essentially anything that a customer might see or engage with from a sustainability standpoint across customer segments and across different channels falls under my purview. At Southwest, our sustainability strategy is called Nonstop to Net Zero, which is our path to net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and a more sustainable future. This includes 3 pillars: carbon, of course, and then circularity, which is working towards reducing waste through maximizing of resources, and collaboration, where we partner with different organizations whose work complements our efforts to achieve our goals and advance sustainability. Thank you.
Jumana, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jumana Master. I'm on Delta Airlines sustainability team. My role is road mapping a sustainable travel experience and scaling initiatives to try to reduce our environmental footprint. I describe a lot of what I do as the Get It on a Plane team. It's really my job to get new innovations on board for the first time to try to accelerate our sustainability strategy. Similarly to Southwest, we also have a net zero by 2050 goal, and our sustainability strategy is divided up into 2 areas: eliminating our climate impact from flying and embedding sustainability in all that we do. So I'm looking forward to speaking more on those things.
Hi, everyone. Prateek, Joshi here. I'm a researcher and project manager at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, calling in from where we're based in Colorado. NREL, as we're known, we are a national laboratory of the U.S. Department of Energy, and we have a lot of research activities primarily focused on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable transportation. My work at NREL spans a variety of electricity grid and sustainable transportation projects, primarily based in South and Southeast Asia.
And finally, aloha, everybody from the beautiful islands of Hawaii. I'm Representative Trish Chica. I represent the Central Oahu District located on Oahu here in Honolulu. So we're a state of about 1.4 million people. And for those of you who may not be familiar, Hawaii has long been a leader in the global clean energy movement. Started a long time ago, but in 2015, we were the first state in the nation to make a groundbreaking commitment to generate 100% of our electricity from renewable sources by 2045. So just happy to share some of the work that we're doing, as well as some of the challenges. But my work in the legislature is really to look at the various policies that help to promote clean energy, infrastructure, sustainable transportation, and just increase energy efficiency for our residents statewide.
All right, thank you all for those introductions. It sounds like really exciting work in a lot of different areas. So now I want to pose some questions that touch on various aspects of sustainable transportation, drawing a little bit from my research as well as your diverse experiences in the field. So I was wondering, what are some of the challenges that you've observed in your work? And also more specifically, how do these challenges really impact Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities? So Sarah, would you like to start us off here?
Absolutely. So aviation is one of 6 what's called hard to abate sectors. So basically that means that the levers to decarbonize our sector either don't exist or are prohibitively expensive. And so in addition to that, we have a lot of external dependencies. So for Southwest, this is pretty consistently reflected in industry analysis as well. Our biggest levers for achieving net zero are really fleet modernization and sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. And with the former, while we have, of course, every airline will have their planned order book, we're also heavily dependent on manufacturers' ability to deliver these more fuel efficient aircraft and to innovate and create those more fuel efficient aircraft in the first place as well. And as we've kind of all seen in the news recently, this has been facing challenges. And then with SAF, I could talk about challenges with SAF for the entire panel. But of course, this is a developing industry that we're trying to build. There's a lot of collaboration going on, but in terms of challenges, I just sum it up by saying there's kind of feedstock availability and competition, scaling new technologies and making sure safety is so critically important for an airline. And so making sure that everything is safe and has passed regulation. And then I would say something that is a little more unique that we've been kind of working through is that there's a really large spotlight on making sure that SAF is truly sustainable in a way that maybe hasn't happened to the same level of scrutiny as for biofuels in the past. And I think that's kind of learning from some past mistakes, but that just means that everything is just has more scrutiny on aviation and SAF today. So it's interesting because we're building a lot of those tools and processes to make sure that SAF is credible in real time while also trying to scale the industry. So yeah.
Jumana, what do you think from your perspective?
Yeah, I think similarly to what Sarah mentioned, aviation is a hard to abate sector. The miracle of flight literally relies on burning jet fuel currently, and that creates emissions. So that's really our biggest opportunity. 90% of our emissions come from jet fuel. So that's the challenge. I think we have challenges within the solutions that are available to us as well. We're very reliant on the tech that's available, so the type of aircraft, how we're innovating there, as well as infrastructure. So Sarah touched on SAF a little bit, sustainable aviation fuel. The sustainable aviation fuel has 80% of reduction in life cycle emissions, so it's currently our biggest opportunity. Unfortunately, the annual production of SAF currently couldn't even power the world's airlines for 1 week. So it's exciting that we're in a space where we're moving so quickly and really gaining momentum, but there are definitely challenges that we have to work through to get to scale.
All right, Representative Chica, would you like to share some of the challenges that you see in your work?
Yeah, and so our islands really are unique in that we have so much abundant natural resources that can be used to produce renewable energy. We have wind, solar, we have flowing water, geothermal energy from our active volcanoes. And if you really look at it, Hawaii does, lead the nation when it comes to the amount of rooftop solar that's installed per capita with the adoption of EV. And we are on track to hitting our milestones of generating 40% of our electricity by 2030. However, we are one of the states that, just import the most fuel because of our unique location in the Pacific. We're the most geographically isolated state and place in the nation. And our position in the Pacific also makes it ideal for aviation to refuel. So the only way to get to Hawaii is, through air. And it's also an inter-island mode of transportation and shipping of goods between and across the islands. And transportation is our largest single energy consumer in Hawaii. Outside of air, that also includes ground transportation and marine, so shipping, and also the military. We have such a huge military presence here in Hawaii. And because of our geographic isolation and also our topography, it really makes a lot of development of public transit also very difficult. So for example, in my district, the 16,000 or so commuters that go to town were located right in the middle of the island of Oahu. Only 2% rely on public transportation. Hawaii does have a mandate to require that our state fleet of public buses and transportation be part of the clean energy, be zero emission. But personally, for residential, switching to EVs isn't cheap. Hawaii also has the highest cost of living in the nation. I mean, our average home is about $1 million, and so it's just very hard to invest in an electric vehicle. And I think finally, if you're just looking at public infrastructure to build, looking at building renewable energy infrastructure, it's most of our land is agriculture or preservation land. We have huge swaths of mountains as well, but it really requires a lot of public-private partnership. So we have large-scale solar farms in my district, for example, that's on a long-term lease. With a power purchase agreement by our public utility, Hawaiian Electric. And so some of this is just some of the ways that, we're able to make use of the land that does exist, but obviously a lot more needs to be done, not just to create more infrastructure so it's more readily available to more residents on the island, but also to bring the cost down of being able to switch to high energy EVs.
Thank you, Representative. Prateek, what about you? What have you seen in terms of challenges in your field?
Yeah, thank you, and appreciate all those answers. Something that my work focuses on a lot is tackling the challenge of coordinating the electricity and transportation sectors. Historically, these sectors have been independent, and there hasn't been much coordination needed, but something that we're seeing a lot with research and development is that with electric vehicles, things like green hydrogen production, other uses of electricity, those two sectors are becoming increasingly linked, and coordinating them at all levels is going to become even more important. So some of the key questions that I'm thinking about are, how will growth in electrified transportation impact our need for new clean energy capacity at all hours of the day? And then how can we also ensure that charging infrastructure for all types of vehicles can be operated in a way that enhances grid reliability and resilience, especially with increasing climate impacts? So those are just some of the key questions with active areas of ongoing research and development here at NREL.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds like there's a lot of really exciting progress, but also some challenges that in each industry and geographic location that we're all facing. So given these challenges, what solutions do you see as most promising or effective? And maybe thinking about how we can ensure these solutions benefit AA and HPI communities and things like that. So since Prateek, you were the last one to speak. We'll just start off with you and thinking about some of the maybe solutions in those areas that you were talking about.
Sure, and definitely a lot of solutions that I could mention, but I'll maybe focus on a case study of a project that I've been working on that kind of is a nice example of this coordinated transportation and electricity planning. So my team and I are currently working with the Bangladesh Economic Zones Authority, and they are developing these large industrial and manufacturing parks throughout the country. So we're working with one specific location, and it's under development, and they're trying to seek private investment and for economic development purposes. But there's also a heavy push from the Bangladeshi government to incorporate sustainability, energy efficient buildings, renewable energy, things like that. So we are working with them at this particular site to assess their needs for electric buses and charging infrastructure. So these electric buses would be used to bring workers in from the towns into these industrial parks, and then transportation within these large campuses. So we're working with them to assess, the needs for the number of buses, the number of chargers, how this would impact the electrical design. And I think it's important because they're considering that from the start, before a lot of these investments have already been made, so that they can plan for this at the beginning, plan for those costs rather than making costlier upgrades down the line. And so that holistic and long-term approach, I think, is important. And again, that's an example of a new development. Not every situation has those advantages, but I still think is a helpful case study to maybe kick off this solution section. So pass it off to my colleagues.
Thank you, Prateek. So Representative Chica, in Hawaii, given the unique geographic and topological challenges, as well as challenges in terms of affordability, what do you see as some of the solutions that are most promising?
Right. So I did mention earlier our improved public transit through the Honolulu rail system. It's called the Skyline. So if anyone is planning a trip to Hawaii soon, it did come online just last year. It's partially running, but it is the most beautiful rail system, as you'll see both ocean and mountain views when you hop on. It is fully electric. But I mention this because it's something that we significantly invested in. We added a 0.5% excise tax to be able to help fund rail, and we also get a lot of federal funding for it. But it also really helps not with mobility of some of the areas that have a lot of development in a part of our island. So it's about 20 miles long, about 18 stations right now. It'll go through and pass through the airport and connect to downtown Honolulu from the leeward or the west side. And part of that will come with the development of the urban core, so transit-oriented development. So my background is in public health too, and so I fully support promoting programs like Complete Streets and active transportation. So really look at planning that does encourage carpooling, bicycling, and walking, and really developing in areas where we can be close to our jobs. And so that's something we're looking at the legislature, is how to support that type of development. And then I did want to talk about one very unique program that we have, which is run by our Department of Business and Economic Development and Tourism, which is called the GEMS program. So GEMS stands for the Green Energy Money Saver Program. And it's really the first debt-free on-bill financing program in the country that finances clean energy upgrades for homeowners, renters, businesses, and nonprofits, regardless of their credit or income. So how it works is there's no upfront cost to be able to install clean energy upgrades in your home or your multifamily condo or your business. And the payment for these upgrades is collected gradually through your utility bill over the course of time. And so it's attached to the meter. So even as a renter, it's something that can be passed along to the next tenant. So I think it's a really innovative financing model that I hope other states could replicate.
Great, thank you. How about in the aviation industry? What are some of the solutions that you guys are seeing?
Yeah, for Delta, as I mentioned, we have a goal of net zero emissions by 2050. Our approach to solutions is really in two parts. One is eliminating our climate impact from flying. As I mentioned, over 90% of our emissions come from burning jet fuel. So our best levers to solve this is addressing what we fly, how we fly, and the fuel that we use. So what we fly, making sure that our fleet is modern and we're operating in the most fuel efficient ways. How we fly, making sure we're capitalizing on all of our operational efficiencies, and the fuel that we use, since sustainable aviation fuel has an 80% life cycle emissions reduction, trying to create more access to sustainable aviation fuel. We have a goal of utilizing 10% sustainable aviation fuel by 2030. The other part of our strategy is embedding sustainability in all that we do. So that's really trying to integrate sustainability as a business mindset in all of our operations. So this addresses our supply chain. We want to get 100% of our preferred vendors to have a net zero plan by the end of next year. It's also addressing the travel experience. So this is really the part of what customers are not seeing sustainable aviation fuel. Those mechanisms aren't as visible, but really what the customer is interacting with. So all of the amenities we offer on board, all of the materials that they're seeing throughout their flight, making sure that those offerings can be as sustainable as possible. And then we also want to address our ground facilities and everything happening below wing on our planes. So those are all our main levers. One project that I've had the opportunity to work on over my last few years at Delta that has been really exciting is Delta previously was using a single-use plastic cup on board, and this cup was contributing 7 million pounds of plastic in the landfill. So over the last few years, we've been innovating on developing and prototyping and testing a paper cup. And by being able to make this paper cup operational to save that much plastic in the landfill every year, while that's not, the bulk of our impact, it's still a pretty big impact for an operation of our size. So yeah, that's been an exciting project, and it's exciting to see all of the solutions come to life.
Just chiming in and adding on to what Jumana said very eloquently, a lot of the things that we're working on are going to take time to materialize into significant emissions reductions, the things like what we fly and SAF. So there's this unique, interesting balance of spending our investment and time as an airline working on these things that we know will address our largest environmental impact, jet fuel, but also doing things that really demonstrate to the world that we're committed to sustainability today. And of course, these things aren't just for show. They do have real tangible impact, like Jumana said, 7 million pounds of plastic. That's amazing. And one of the benefit of tackling these things is that they do also have fewer external dependencies, so we can really make a lot of progress. At Southwest, that's kind of where the circularity and collaboration pillars come into play. And so, for example, we're also working on eliminating single-use plastics and waste diversion. This is interesting to me because, of course, there's recycling as you think about it in terms of, items on board, but we also have a really robust aircraft retirement program. So as we're kind of bringing in more fuel-efficient aircraft, what happens to the aircraft that are no longer in our fleet? And making sure that all of those materials are really getting reused, repurposed, recycled, and really trying to minimize the amount that does go to landfill. We're also trying to better measure and understand warming contrails in order to kind of determine how we can work on avoidance procedures. And we also help fund the Yale Center for Natural Carbon Capture. I bring these up because this work, or both of these examples, there's a lot of potential for co-benefits with these that impact communities, whether that's kind of biodiversity, water, air quality, etc.
That's great to hear as an avid traveler who is often on these airplanes to see all of the changes that are happening from a customer perspective as well. So I wanted to think about a little bit some of the work that I've done in carbon pricing and also installing things like active transportation infrastructure in communities. That I've seen that a lot of times that community engagement is really pivotal in gaining broader public support. And so I was wondering, in all of your work, what strategies have you found to be more effective in engaging communities in kind of participating in sustainable transportation initiatives? So Representative Chica, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. I love this question. Central to any policy being implemented and adopted fully is really intentional and having meaningful dialogue with the communities that it intends to benefit. And so I believe the key is really robust and meaningful community outreach. I think it's very vital to engage in people and invest in having either staffing or programming that can understand the communities and can speak their language. We have a very diverse population of Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiians, and very different cultures within our regions. And the first is to really identify and understand the unique barriers that they face within different segments of the community. So what's preventing them from utilizing the transition to EVs, for example? Land is a sensitive topic too, and how it's being utilized, right? And so one prime example that I wanted to talk about is in Hawaii is from our state energy office. It's called the Clean Energy Wayfinders program that launched a couple of years ago. So this innovative program, it's kind of like has this model, youth fellowship model, where fellows are paid to work with community-based programs. So they're like navigators, right? As a wayfinder, their main role is to share information, to establish trust within the communities that they're based and located in. It's really to understand what's necessary to facilitate access between the community for a lot of the clean energy adoption. So they go to the schools, they go to community and organize community meetings, they go to the individual households. They do focus on low and moderate income groups and under-resourced communities. So for example, they have conversations on just, okay, how do we help lower your energy bill? Hawaii, again, is a state where our electric bill is 3 times higher than that of the mainland. And how can also this community, for example, be able to understand wind energy, and how can they also adopt, for new developments within their area, and why it's so essential, right? I think it's just that critical piece. Sometimes there's that gap when we don't really, when we develop a lot of reports and things, it's usually just a checkbox that, we made the RFP or we made the proposal or the report public to the community, and we're just collecting feedback. I mean, a lot of communities in Hawaii don't even have access to internet or broadband. And so I'm really proud that, we have this innovative program that really hires and partners with youth, a lot of folks who do care about their future, to work a lot with these communities and navigate the unique challenges that these communities face.
I love that, just kind of addressing all of the differences between the communities. So I was wondering, Prateek, whether you can maybe speak to some of your more international experiences with community engagement.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I'd like to definitely expand on Representative LaChica's response highlighting community engagement using an example of another Pacific island that I've worked in. We had a project that wrapped up recently with the government of Tonga, working with them on a transportation policy framework. And this was really led by the Ministry of Energy in Tonga as the key government convener. So they were the ones that were able to bring together all the different stakeholders and do a lot of that public outreach. And we worked and consulted with other organizations that had done transportation work in Tonga, other international groups as well, just to make sure that we were building upon that work and really synthesizing that in a policy framework. Something that I thought worked really well is we had a series of in-country workshops to get feedback, really detailed feedback on each line item of the policy proposal. So this was over the course of a week. We had multiple different workshops and got feedback from folks throughout the country, a variety of government ministries as well, beyond the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Climate Change, Transport, etc. And then we also had groups representing civil society, auto dealerships, labor representatives. So it was a broad swath of folks that were able to comment on each of the policies, and then we were able to incorporate that in the final version of this framework, which the Tongan delegation brought to the Conference of the Parties. And then the last part that I thought worked really well was, in addition to having that domestic outreach during that week, we brought in folks from the transport agencies in Fiji, Kiribati, and Vanuatu, so peer island nations of Tonga, and they sat in on the meetings. They could sort of hear what the policy proposals were. They kind of shared insights and experiences from their own countries, heard what was happening in Tonga. So we were able to leverage the effort in Tonga, the larger investment, to also help share some of those findings with some of the peers and form a little bit of a community so that other Pacific islands could benefit.
Thank you, Prateek. So I love hearing about all of the stakeholder and community engagement and how that has worked well in a lot of different contexts. So I was thinking about kind of that equity and its relationship with economic development. I was thinking that perhaps any of you can speak to how we can think about increasing representation of AA and HPI individuals in the clean energy movement. What are some new opportunities like jobs or suppliers or local initiatives that could be emerging that could really enhance workforce development in our communities? Sarah or Jumana?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think on more of a personal note, we know that BIPOC communities, including Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities, are really at the forefront of the climate crisis. So it's really important that they're also playing a big role in informing solutions. And I also think historically, almost part of our ancestry in some ways, and a lot of where many of our families may be from, they're very highly populated areas. I think sustainability is a way of life, and also very impacted by natural disasters. So I think there's, almost kind of inherent learnings from those communities and their interaction with the world around them. And I think it's really important that those are also informing our climate movement. We know that these communities have been at the forefront. So to really see that transition into what we define as the sustainability space more professionally, while folks may not actually have a job in that, but they're contributing to it every day, I think it's nice to see those spaces connect a bit more and us to see more equitable representation, because they should definitely be informing solutions.
Yeah, I'd say speaking a little more in the corporate context, but building upon that, I think it's really exciting that there's so many opportunities for anyone who's passionate about climate action and sustainability to plug in at the organizations that they're at, whether that's in a formal capacity, like an actual kind of like title that has sustainability in it, or even just being kind of a sustainability champion and looking for ways of, a lot of companies may not even have a formal sustainability team, but looking at, does our company recycle, or, are we sourcing renewable energy, and trying to get plugged in with the people who do that. And I think that there's a lot of room for organic transition into getting more involved with climate action, and then that transitioning to a formal capacity or not. There's also just a massive amount of investment that we know going into clean energy. So just a lot of opportunities across different sectors, whether that's, in corporate or academia or research or whatnot. And so I know, like at Southwest, we're always looking for kind of companies to work with that, complement the work that we're trying to do with sustainability. And so looking for, I think really the opportunities are endless.
I'm gonna jump in here. So part of what we're excited about too in Hawaii is I really believe that clean energy jobs are one of the fastest growing occupations nationwide. And I currently serve as the vice chair for the House Committee on Education, and I really believe in investing in direct pathways towards these jobs, right? And so here in Hawaii, we're looking to develop jobs in battery storage or grid maintenance and development, and other educations that don't really require a 2 to 4 year degree. These are a lot of the trades jobs. So we have a green jobs program, which is through, again, our Hawaii State Energy Office, and we partner with community colleges, with even it starts also at the K to 12, and our Chamber of Commerce, and then our different trade labor unions to create these pathways to renewable energy jobs. And we, speaking of youth, there and our commitment to clean energy, we recently settled on a very historic settlement agreement, the Navahine Historic Settlement Agreement, just last month, which is really the world's first ever youth-led constitutional climate case that seeks to address climate pollution, right, from the transportation sector. So what it really is 13 youth, across the state brought the case to the Hawaii State Supreme Court, just asserting their rights to a safe and healthy climate, right? As a mom of 2 young kids too, it's what do they stand to inherit? And I do believe we need to make this make this place better for them. And so I think that that settlement agreement also really helps us to finalize a lot of the investments in renewable energy that's needed for public transportation, incentives for the switching to EV and infrastructure. We also have a lot of, the Inflation Reduction Act is also helping us to build out some of these across the state. But really, I think it's about not just enabling our youth to be part of this conversation, but it's also telling them that it's not just up to you, right? Because that's what they're hearing from us, from government, and nationally. The dialogue is like, it's up to your generation to address this problem, but that shouldn't be the case. So what investments do we need to make now so that we're also diversifying the economy, so that they have the good paying jobs that can, as part of the clean energy sector, but also how do we continue to commit to all the promises, right, that we're making with our clean energy goals.
Yeah, I agree that thank you, Representative and Jumana, Sarah, for answering that question, because I think as an educator in a university setting, I do see how important it is for representation to appear in both research and academia, as well as an industry, for the young people to see that there is space for them to participate in these solutions towards clean energy and sustainable transportation. So thank you for all of that really exciting progress that's been happening. So I was wondering if we looked ahead a little bit more, even though there's already a lot of exciting progress going on, what are some of the more innovations and developments in sustainable transportation or clean energy that our community should be more excited about? What are we looking for in the future that could maybe be landscape changing or exciting for us to think about? Let's see, who would like to jump on first? Maybe Jumana, would you like to start off?
Sure. I think we have so much to be excited about. I think in the aviation space particularly, I am very inspired and excited about what the future of flight could look like. I think we're going to need more interconnected modes of travel. When we think about future aircraft, we're thinking things like hydrogen-fueled aircraft and electric planes. And I think the ways these operate together and these operate with, trains and existing infrastructure will definitely require some thinking and infrastructure planning. But I think it's really exciting to think about how, we can all move about in different ways. I also think, a few panelists have mentioned this already, but just the awareness increasing and also all the investment being put towards the space, I think are incredibly exciting. A project and also the sense of collaboration, a project that I've had the opportunity to work on the last 2 years. It's something called the Sustainable Flight Challenge. And we're part of a SkyTeam Alliance. So it's an alliance of 18 other airlines. And we actually collaborate together every year to try to fly the most sustainable flight possible. So this thinks of every aspect of flying, the fuel that we're using, the food that we're sourcing and where it's coming from, the weight on board, the customer experience, how we're communicating with customers, making sure that we're being transparent and really bring them along on this journey. And then after this challenge, it's actually very collaborative. It's open source and we share all of our learnings. So if one airline was able to overcome a challenge and another airline wasn't, or vice versa, by just sharing all our learnings, we're all able to move a lot more quickly. And that's been really exciting because really we all have something to gain from the learnings and we're all working towards the same thing. So I think intersector collaboration as well as cross-sector collaboration and learning from other industries has been something I've been excited about.
Mine is a little bit nerdy, I think, but I'm really excited that with sustainable aviation and in general with sustainability, that there's been this huge push for more kind of transparency and communication of credible claims. Some of this is being driven by regulation, of course, but essentially the days of being able to kind of like stick a green leaf on something or kind of just package something in like brown packaging and making people think that it looks more natural. I think that those days are really over and that's a good thing. And that kind of credibility around what claims a company is making is really going to transform. And I think what that will do is enable customers and stakeholders in the broader community just to have more information and be more engaged. I think that sometimes it's really difficult you want to support a more sustainable company, but there's just so much information out there that it's really hard to know kind of how to make a more sustainable decision in your personal life. And so from a work perspective, I'm excited about making sure that, they're still creative and fun and punchy, but accurate. And then from a consumer, I'm just excited about seeing that evolve and having people be more excited and aware and understanding of what companies are doing and how they can influence that with their choices.
I can jump on. I'm excited to get to see our rail system Skyline fully operational. So imagine being a visitor to Hawaii, as you're descending from your Southwest or your Delta flight, you see all the rooftop solar that's, across all of our communities in Hawaii. You'll be able to hop on to rail to get to your, green, Hawaii Green awardee, like resort or hotel in Waikiki. And you're, taking, maybe an Uber or a Lyft that's powered by, EV. And I'm really excited about all the federal funding that's coming in that will enable us to, create more charging stations across the state, because right now it's just 1 in every 24 vehicles has the ability, in terms of like charging ports. And I'm also very excited about new types of technology that's been innovative. And so one of this is a partnership with the University of Hawaii and Ocean Power Technologies at our Marine Corps base here in Oahu. It's looking at wave technology. And so the technology employs, because of our consistent, wave motion, it employs the bobbing motion of a buoy to generate electricity. And I think there's just so many things that we can look at with all the renewable energy sources that we have in our state.
Yeah, I'm super excited to hear about all of these exciting developments. For myself in research, there's a lot of exciting things going on with a lot of Department of Transportation. They are thinking more about multimodal and how those are different modes really do compare with just car travel, vehicle travel. I think getting all of these different modes on the same playing field is a bit of additional research is needed, but that we're moving in that direction. That's very exciting. So as we're wrapping up our discussion here, I want to thank all of our panelists for their invaluable insights into the challenges and also exciting opportunities and sustainable transportation. And I hope that this discussion has really been inspiring and brought further thought to all of us for a more sustainable and equitable transportation future. Thank you again all for joining us today.